Recording in progress.
I call to order the Board of Library Trustees regular meeting, Thursday, August 25th, 2022. Francesca, could you call the roll?
Yes. Vice Chair Joshi,
Present.
Trustee Moreau,
Present.
Trustee Petty,
Here.
Trustee Thompson,
Here.
and Chair Felguth.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, first item on the agenda is a presentation to recognize Library Trustee Jim Thompson for service to the Monterey Public Library and the City of Monterey. Brian, take it away.
All right, this is my first action on the part on the Board of Library Trustees, so hopefully I do this right for you. But the recommendation that the Library Board recognize Jim Thompson for his 4+ years of service to the Monterey Public Library and City of Monterey as a member of the Board of Library Trustees. Library Trustee Jim Thompson was appointed to the Board of Library Trustees on June 27th, 2018. With an extensive background in public service, he brought over 30 years of management experience at the city, county, and federal government levels to the board, including 9 years as Assistant City Manager of Monterey. His dedication to the board and library was immediately evident as he stepped forward to serve on committees, attend library, fundraising, and volunteer appreciation events, and provided immeasurable contributions and guidance to the board and library director. Little did he, the board, or staff know the extraordinary amount of work he would accomplish during his term. Thompson served on 7 ad hoc board committees: the Facilities Master Plan, Feasibility Study, Annual Giving Strategies, Funding, Benchmarking Library Costs and Services, Library Policy, and Library Director Recruitment. He served as the board's vice chair for fiscal year 2020-2021 during the height of the pandemic, and served as board chair in fiscal year 2021-2022 as the library began its recovery and reopened the building to the public in the summer of 2021. The intensive work serving on the Library Director Recruitment Committee, including an RFP to hire an executive recruitment firm committee, reviewing applications, interviewing semifinalists with Trustee Moreau, and interviewing final candidates with the entire board. The detailed timeline and advanced planning was critical to the success of the Library Director recruitment that resulted in only a 2-week gap between the outgoing and incoming new library director. Additionally, Thompson and Moreau served on the Library Policy Committee, reviewing all 34 board policies, identifying 10 in need of revision, and recommending 2 for recension. The committee's primary focus was on Library Board 300, Personal Rules and Regulations, last revised in 2003. Thompson spent an extraordinary amount of time and painstaking effort combing through the policy and history. They met with the Human Resources Director, City Attorney, and City Manager's Office. Ultimately, Library Board Policy 300 was rescinded and replaced with a reference to Chapter 25 of the City Code. Trustee Thompson lightheartedly joked that he thought he had retired from public service years ago when he found himself similar full-time work. His warmth, keen sense of insight, strategic direction, sharp level of detail, commitment, perseverance, and sincere care for library services improved the community more than may be easily conveyed in the report that just skims the surface of the impact he made. He is incredibly positive, shared kind patience, and instilled a bright demeanor during challenging times. We thank Jim Thompson for his exemplary dedicated service, warmth, good humor, and tremendous support through what will be remembered in history as one of the most challenging and pivotal times. His accomplishments were astounding. As fellow library trustee Moreau once complimented, Trustee Thompson left the Monterey Public Library in a far better place than when he first began his term in 2018.
And I'd just like to add, I am so grateful, Jim, for your mentorship this last year, working with me to bring me up to speed and when I served as vice chair with you. So thank you very much. Other trustees, you have anything you would like to share? Go ahead, Marcia.
I just want to know what you're going to do with all your spare time, Jim.
I'm going to go through a lot of old library files first, and then I'm going to do some traveling, and then I'm going to do a lot of reading. And taking care of my wife, who I've kind of ignored a bit over the last couple of years. Shoot.
Thank
So if
you.
I could, I would like to say a couple of words.
1 second, let trustee Bob has something.
Oh, I was just going to say that consistent with what Brian read, I'm trying to get my hand down. There we go. There's no way we would have accomplished everything we have the last couple of years without all of those things that were mentioned in the description of Jim's work. And when you said you're going to do a lot of reading, I assume that means we're going to have to increase the budget for circulatory materials in the library because it sounds like there'll be a lot of them out for long periods of time. But we'll cope with that and just blame you for all of the overdue books that aren't being charged fines.
Nat, did you want to add something before Jim speaks?
Sure. Just on behalf of the City Manager's Office, we really appreciate Jim for his service on the Library Board of Trustees as a predecessor of mine from a number of years ago. Your insights on the Library Board has been tremendously helpful on not only the recruitment, bringing Brian on board. I enjoyed working with you closely and working with Marcia and the gang on that as well, and as well as your work with the various subcommittees, including the benchmarking group. Really, Jim, I think you and others were the additional staff that our library director didn't have, and it really helped us move forward on a number of initiatives and projects. So many thanks to you, Jim. I look forward to hearing more about your travels as well. And I'm sorry we do not have a Jim Thompson trail sign for you, but I think you already have a sign from when you retired from the city as an employee. So thank you.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I wanted to thank all of you for your comments. And I have to say that the written write-up from Brian, and I believe Francesca had a hand in it as well, was a bit over the top. My one criticism of the agenda for this is that report was a little bit over the top and too generous, but I nonetheless appreciate it. And I just wanted to say that the last little more than 4 years since I stayed on a little longer to help with the recruitment process for our new library director has been very rewarding and satisfying on a number of different levels. But particularly rewarding, I think, is the sense of team that I feel like we've had over the last 4 years. The Board of Trustees has gotten along quite well. The staff has done a great job in working with the board, and that in particular, I think, has helped smooth things over with the rest of the city organization, and that's been very helpful. And I just particularly want to give a shout out, since we've mentioned some of these ad hoc committees. The vast majority of the work I've done over the last couple of years, especially, has been on these various subcommittees, and the majority of them, my partner in these subcommittees has been Marcia Mora, and she has just been tremendous to work with. And even though we've, I think, done a lot of work that will benefit the library for years to come, she made it fun, and I think we really did get a lot done in those subcommittees, as well as an entire board, and of course working with the staff and our tremendous volunteers, to say nothing of the Friends and Foundation. It's just a great group that I think have just worked together quite well over the last several years. And I think with Brian on board, he will keep that momentum going. And I just feel very good about this current status of the library. And I'm so pleased that the future items on today's agenda are looking at possibly opening the library for more hours instead of looking at how we can cut our budget further. So that's a much more positive feel to have for a meeting. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and especially the staff, because they've been through a really hard time the last couple of years. And Kim, I know, has had quite a burden in trying to coordinate, especially during this transition from Inga to Nat to Brian. And so she's done a great job, as well as all of the staff. So I just can't thank everyone else enough for this team approach that I think we've had to this last difficult couple of years. So thank you all very much as well.
Francesca, do you want to see if there's any members of the public who also wanted to comment at this point?
Yes. If I will share how to participate in this meeting on Zoom. And you may do so by using the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. To call in by telephone, dial toll-free 833-568-8864, enter meeting ID 161-352-8864, followed by the pound sign. If prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment, click on the raise hand button in the Zoom toolbar. If you called in by phone, raise your hand by dialing *9 and unmute yourself when called upon by dialing *6. Attendees will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Today's meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you plan to make a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone and ensure you join in time to accommodate the delay. And at this time, there are no public comments.
Thank you so much. All righty, moving along. It's time for the consent items. And the one item on our consent agenda is approval of minutes for the July 28, 2022 meeting. Do I have any questions, comments, or clarifications from trustees? Bob?
I move that we approve the minutes from our last meeting as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Francesca, can you call for a vote?
Yes, Joshi,
Yes.
Moreau,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Felguth.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we're now at the point of public comments. Public comments allows you, the public, to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject which is not on the agenda. Any person or group desiring to bring an item to the attention of the library board may do so during public comments or by addressing a letter of explanation to the library director, Monterey Public Library, 625 Pacific Street, Monterey, California, 93940. And then the appropriate staff person will contact the sender concerning the details. Do we have any public comments?
To make a public comment, you may raise your Zoom hand or dial *9 if connected by phone. And there are no comments at this time.
All righty. Then we will move on to public appearance. Item number 3, preliminary discussion for calendar year 2023 library and bookmobile operating schedule. Brian, take it away.
Sure. So I was going to say, as of this time, as the trustees know, we're operating on a Tuesday through Saturday schedule, 10 to 6. And so the majority of staff are all working on a Tuesday through Saturday schedule. And we have limited stops right now on our bookmobile. So any changes to this are going to have to take into account additional PTS hours and additional, as we bring on staff back onto the site, what those challenges might be of stretching people out around there. So just to start off with, I think at the current staffing that we have, that we are bringing folks on as of October 1, but we're at the current staffing, we're not able to provide Sunday, Monday, or evening hours as it is. But wanted to bring on the thoughts about the expanding the hours and really more about the next item on the agenda. But thoughts from the trustees regarding the expansion of the hours and especially the bookmobile as well as the operating schedule for the library.
Trustee Petty,
You're muted.
you're muted. There you go.
So actually, I have a question for Kim because she's one of the staff that's there 5 days a week. And in previous meetings, we have discussed the questions some of our patrons have brought to our attention about, if not expanding, changing the current schedule to include some Sunday and or evening hours. And so I was wondering, I mean, we're open like what, from 10 to 6, 5 days a week. Are there some days, Kim, or hours of days when use of the library by the public is low enough that we might consider eliminating those hours and adding them to either a Sunday, if that's enough, if there are enough hours to justify that, or just adding it like from 6 to 8, 1 or 2 nights a week? Are there some days when you just sit there, you know, with no public to assist or talk to, and we might switch some hours to early evening? So I think a lot of people would go to the library after work if we were open just until 8 o'clock. But that's a question I think probably Kim, better than anybody else here, could possibly conjecture and answer.
I don't have the statistics right on hand. There are times where things are slower, but I don't think there's any obvious times where it's just dead and there's nobody here. I think it's definitely something that if we look at the survey we did, the reopening survey, and saw what hours people were interested in, and then we're talking about doing another survey to really, you know, analyze, are people really looking for those evening hours? Are they really looking for the Sunday hours? The caveat there is if we start chunking up the days, the people who work 40 hours a week and they need to be in the library 5 days a week, you can't really like try to staff a 7-day week because then it gets really complicated, because you have to spread out those full-time workers and they're not going to be working like half days, you know, to cover 6 days. So that would also be something to think about.
I don't have that survey you referred to in front of me. It was just completed earlier this year. And I do remember, am I remembering correctly? And the other trustees can help me with my memory. I was thinking early evening was one of the top choices of the respondents to that survey for with regard to hours of operation.
I believe so, but it's been a while, so that's why another survey would be good. Vice Chair Joshi, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, my question was, a year ago when we went to the RFID system, Inga told us that the new system had a way of counting traffic as it came in. If we have that data, I want to know if there's a particular day, in reference to what Bob was saying, where traffic is slow enough that we'd rather shift that to, say, a Sunday or something like that.
Trustee Thompson.
I also think it would be helpful to have some of that data on our current traffic through the counting system that we have to get a better handle on that. But the main comment I had was that my perception is that while evenings certainly would be desirable, at least one evening a week, I think I'm even more concerned about Monday afternoons when we have so many school children that we're not serving at all. So my, subject to more information or more education, my inclination would be to make the priority for Monday afternoons. So that's my initial inclination.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you. Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on there is when you're looking at data and traffic, is that often you can have a rush in the morning and you can have a rush at night. And there could be gaps in the middle of the day. And it's really hard to close a library in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Looking at that data about where your peak hours are. I will say also in the mornings is often good for story times. Past experience like that is that you have story times before nap time for the kids.
Yeah.
So really looking at what programs are going to be offered in the mornings versus that. So all of those come into account, as well as when you have a 10 to 6 offering of hours, that's pretty much a full person's day rather than having a full person and spreading them out 10 hours and changing up their schedules on that. And I will have some comments on the regarding the past survey on the next survey, on the next item.
Marcia.
As far as the bookmobile piece goes, I guess it really depends. It's not the hours so much as the number of stops that you make and where you're going to go, and which stops it is that we're not serving right now. I think is what we need to look at for that. So that will dictate. I'm not sure how many hours you need to cover all the stops that you need. I think once you figure that out, then that'll kind of tell you about the hours for the bookmobile.
Yeah, and it's not only the stops and the hours. I'm wondering, the placement of the stops. Like right now, we have certain places that we go to, but I'm wondering if we've looked in the community if there are more optimum spots to drive traffic in that might be better. Kim.
I was going to say in regards to the bookmobile that we are currently looking at the old schedules and the stops that we had to discontinue. For example, we had been visiting some of the city preschools to do a story time and then offer bookmobile services as school got out. And the city has reduced the number of preschools they have open right now, but we've been talking to the recreation department about maybe trying to get those established. And then, yeah, again, looking at what stops we had, prior to the pandemic, and then also looking at historical schedules and seeing, and we were able to bring back retired bookmobile coordinator Joanne White, who's been able to bring a lot of history to the discussion about, we used to do it this way and then we stopped doing it this way because of this, but now maybe in 2022 that's not an issue anymore. So we've started going through that. And the other thing is the bookmobile coordinator position moved up from an RPT to a full-time as of this fiscal year. So that is also going to give us the more staff hours to expand that schedule.
It's great. Do we have any comments from the public on this topic?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comments, Chair Felguth.
Okay. Bob.
Yeah. I understand how difficult scheduling for staff would be if we, had different hours on different days and chopped it up like that. So an alternative could be to, like Brian was suggesting, activities for youngsters who are not of school age, in the morning before nap time. My nap time is about 1:30 or 2, just in case. But at the other end of the age scale, I think that there may be a number of older patrons who, while I spoke on behalf of evening hours, there are a number of older folks who don't want to go out at night, don't want to drive at night. And if we could schedule more activities for that segment in the morning, then the morning hours would be even better utilized than however they are now. I mean, wouldn't it be neat? I mean, we talk about intergenerational programs all the time, at least in the world of senior services that I'm involved in with the county and everything. That that's one of the topics that's on everybody's tip of their tongue. And just think of the intergenerational activities we could have with young parents, young children, and older patrons in the AMs before the high school kids arrive in the afternoon. I mean, I think there are creative possibilities there that would allow us to be innovative, and not just in remote Zoom kinds of things, but actually in-person events, before nap time.
I know in days past, we used to have adult story times there that were very, very popular.
We could
So-
have joints, we could have,
Mhm.
you know, we if we're really creative about it, we could have story times that were suitable for both older and younger
Yeah,
individuals.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the older ones would like to read to the younger ones. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, there are a lot of different, and get them involved and active and, you know, make them work for their nap. You know, it's just, I think it is an opportunity that we should, you know, not let just go by.
Nat.
I was going to comment earlier during public comment, so I really appreciate Trustee Petty's comments about intergenerational programming and being creative. Brian has initiated and reached out to the Parks and Recreation Director, Karen Larson, to talk about those partnerships and opportunities to maybe have joint programming. Or I know we haven't done a lot of some of the programs at Cholsey Park have only started to come back, and this might be the right time to look at where does senior programs fit in with both the library and the senior center, and perhaps the Bookmobile as an option. And when we talk about the Bookmobile services, also as a city, we're focused on the diversity, equity, and inclusion framework, and it'll be I think helpful to go back and refer to that once it's finalized in the next month or so and adopted on our end of what the next steps are and how do we reach out to neighborhoods that may not historically participate in the library. Those are our thoughts from CMO.
Thank you. So at this time, where do we want to go from here? Shall we just, at this point, move on to the next item, which kind of puts the meat on the bones here? Are folks okay with that? 'Cause this isn't really anything we're making a decision about. We're just throwing ideas out.
I'm fine with that as long as Brian feels like he got the input that he was looking for.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, thank you.
All righty. Well, then paired with this is item number 4, discuss proposed community survey regarding 2023 library operating schedule.
So, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as we referred to in the last item, the last survey was the Monterey Public Library Reopening Satisfaction Survey, which was submitted back in March. And with that, there were 2 specific questions geared towards opening. And I'll lead this with stating the age groups represented in that survey. Under age 20 was 0%, 20 to 65 was 44.8%, and 66 and up was 55.2%. So with that, there was 2 specific questions regarding the operating hours. And the question 2 was, MPL is open Tuesdays through Saturdays. Are you satisfied with our days of operation? And 81.75% said yes. And then there was an option to make a comment. And that's where some of those comments came in regarding days of the week. And then question of 3 was, when open, our service hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Are you satisfied with our hours of operation? So at that time, 86.61% said yes, and 13.39% said no. So again, that was where more comments were made regarding Sundays or Mondays or earlier, like 7, 8, or 9 a.m. or later in the evening. So there was a variety of responses on both of those. So with that, because that was part of a larger survey, just in terms of satisfaction, I think it would be wise to, my recommendation would be for staff to put together a survey that would start on the meet and greet, which is for myself on September 10th as a way to start that out, and reach out to provide the questions in both Spanish and English. The last survey was done just in English. Send it out to Monterey Peninsula Unified School District through Peach Jar, which is their communication portal, and see if we could send it out to the students so that we'd have more input from the students out there. Post on our library receipts, have printed copies, and offer at different meet and greets, at the parking event that we have in September with the city, at our Bookmobile stops, and send it through our constant contact. So it's just a wide variety of ways to send it out. I have a couple just potential questions just to see how you guys feel on this. One is it would be a Likert scale, which would be, you know, either a 5 to 1 to 5, 0, 1 to 5, or neutral, very good. Those things would be, how satisfied are you with our current operating schedule? Because the past one was just a yes or no. And when the library is able to open more hours, which days or times would be ideal? And so that would be, you know, Sunday, Monday, and then list weekday evenings. And where do you currently live? I think it would be interesting to get a map of the Monterey voting districts, because we can't get all of the census block groups on something like this, on a very simple one. But if we were to list the current map up there, what voting group you are, so just we've got a broad response rate of region 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our top patron/member cities: Seaside, Marina, Pacific Grove, Salinas, Carmel, other, or declined to state. And then just a text entry: what neighborhood or area would you like to see a Bookmobile stop? And then what is your age group? So it'd be a very short, specific survey, really geared towards operational hours rather than full on programs. And so the services would be, for me, would be the Bookmobile services that we provide at our sites. And I think just getting that option where people might say Hilltop Park, you know, or they stay at, you know, community center, whatever they're going to say, we want to get that as just a text input, because there's so many different places that might come up in there rather than a drop down. So that's my proposal. And I think if we started it in September, to try to get it by the October deadline.
That sounds good. Bob?
Yeah, thank you. In our agenda packet, one of the things relative to this item referred to the distribution of the survey so that we can hear from non-library users. And
Yes.
I think that's a good idea if it can be done. I mean, it's almost a little bit like trying to prove the null hypothesis, which you cannot do. But I think, and I appreciate Brian's concern about not getting into the rating of individual programs and everything, but having it be more general. But still, I would like to know, not just, hey, when would you like us to be open, you know, in general, but consistent with one of the things that I liked about Brian's presentation of himself before he was hired was to look at the library as a community hub and a place where people would come for more things than just checking out a book and taking it home. But and so I would like to incorporate into this survey something general that says, what kind of programs would you like to see the library offer? And not real specifics, don't rate them, don't rank them, but what, and I'm also wondering what would be in the operational definition of a non-library user. If somebody only comes once a year, are they a user or a non-user? I mean, you know, when you talk about drugs, if somebody takes a drug once a year, you don't usually call them a user. So I'm wondering, I mean, how frequently does a person have to come to the library to be considered a user of the library? And I don't know, some question getting to, do you come? How often do you come? Or why don't you? What would you like to see we offer so that you would want to come? Again, you know, at a very preliminary level.
Other trustees? Marcia?
Yeah, I'm just want to get back to this idea of 0% response among the high school, you know, and middle school kids. And I'm wondering whether maybe a conversation with PK or somebody at MPUSD about what is the best way to reach these kids. maybe even disseminating it in classrooms or something like that. I don't know, but I don't know which kids, I don't know if they all log on to their portal or if that's only certain people or what, but I think maybe it's worth drilling down because we got zero information about our young people users, and they're so important. And then I don't know about getting the little kids. It's the parents who are going to respond for them, and I'm not sure how you do that either. Or, you know, when would you bring your 5-year-old to, you know, here, or kinds of things like that. But I think we should give some thought to. I don't have any solutions, but just that we should give some thought to how to get this questionnaire out to other people besides seniors and mature adults.
Jim.
Yeah, I really like the approach that Brian described. I'm very supportive of that and agree with the comments that Marcia made. And if there are ways of doing some of the things that Bob suggested, I think that would be good as well. But I think it's probably is helpful to keep it fairly short. I think you might get a little better response rate. So I, have a little bit of mixed feelings about that. But in general, I think Bob's suggestions were very good as well. And I particularly think that the previous survey that had no young people in it was obviously a major problem with how to read that data. The other part, in my opinion, is that I think most people in the area were so happy to have the library open again at all after being closed for a year that I think they were very generous and forgiving almost in their comments on that previous survey. My guess is now they would be a little bit more critical and in some senses more responsive to the questions that we had, because my impression was, when we first opened, that people were just unbelievably happy to have the library open at all. And we were open more than most were, and our sidewalk service was more than most libraries were. So we were kind of leading the way. And I think some of the libraries now are open more than we are. I don't really have a good handle on that, but that's my sense of it. So anyway, I think we may get a somewhat different response to this, in addition to the different types of questions that Brian was talking about. So anyway, in general, I'm very supportive, and I just wanted to offer those comments about that. I would expect to see somewhat of a different types of response this time than last time.
As part of the discussion, there was a suggestion that we might consider setting up a little ad hoc committee with a couple trustees serving on that to work with staff to finalize questions, the time frame, and review responses. Are any of the trustees interested in volunteering to serve on such an ad hoc committee? Vice Chair Joshi and Trustee Petty. I see no other people leaping forward. So Brian, I think you have your ad hoc committee.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion on this topic? Again,
I'm not sure we've asked for public. I'm not sure we've asked for public input. Yeah.
No, I was just getting ready to do that. Francesca, can you see if there's any public comment on this?
Yes, to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And Chair Falguth, there are no public comments at this time.
All righty. Thank you. And thank you to our volunteers for our new ad hoc committee. We're now on to informational reports and staff comments. Item number 5, receive financial report.
Excuse me, Jennifer, since the last survey committee was the ad hoc reopening survey committee, are we called the ad hoc finally opened committee?
Sounds more like an ad hoc survey committee.
Okay, all right. Well,
I'm no fun. I'm no fun, Bob.
We'll settle for simple. Okay.
Chair Felguth, is there what the time for my updates? Is this between 5 and 6? I'm not sure on just to confirm on the agenda.
Oh, on the updates, usually we go ahead after that, but if you prefer to do it before, I have no problem with that. Whatever works best for you. Because these two items normally go by pretty rapidly.
If you don't mind, I'll go ahead just to kind of, because I think some of it ties into this too.
Okay.
First off, thank you to the entire Board of Library Trustees for bringing me on. I'm really excited to be here. This is a fantastic opportunity. Moved in here during car week. So August 12th, like I was saying, pulling up the rental truck in here, and started on August 16th. So during that time, day one, we had our city council agenda and attended that. And both of our consent items passed, and that was regarding the funds appropriation and the Young Readers mural that is moving forward.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're currently working on the legal agreement for the mural there. And I've met with Mike and John Sovereign, as well as the artist Natalia, regarding this. So we're on our right path with that. Met with Nat regarding that as well. Been meeting one-on-one with library staff and Museum Cultural Arts Commission, the chair and the vice chair, Friends and Foundation, and the Chocolate and Wine Benefit Committee. Had a meeting with them recently, and met with staff from Pacific Grove, community organizations. Just been active and walking around and trying to stay busy, getting to know Monterey as much as possible. Dennis is back working, giving me insight into our local history and museums, and it's been great having his professional opinion and insight onto everything here in Monterey. We have a reference and local history librarian scheduled to start on October 1st. So looking forward to that. We are looking at a MIIS intern for calendar year 23. And so with that, there's my thought on that is to bring them on in terms of a community strategic planning. So we bring on
Perfect.
along with the board about like what programs, what services. So back to what you're mentioning, Trustee Petty, at the last item, it's bringing in that person to help steer community discussions on site or possibly off site. What would phase one of our project proposal of map and space planning, all of those kind of things. I'd really like to get somebody on board that can really dedicate some time to look at that for us. Met with CSU Monterey Bay earlier today regarding service learning opportunities for local history as well as our museums. It sounds like from talking with IST or IT, we have new public PCs coming and network updates coming for our public computers. So that's fantastic to hear. And we're going to be reviewing our printing options and our self-checkout machines. I'm working with Kim on those as well. And so look for those coming in this next calendar year. And during my time, I volunteered on a couple of grants prior to joining the library. And I was California Revealed. So I submitted a grant for California Revealed. That would be to digitize some of our images here from the Ruppel collection, specifically on the 1849. Now, from California Revealed, talking with them, they have a backlog of submissions. So I don't know if we're going to get in this year because they postponed submissions from during the pandemic. Also for our memory labs to digitize. So our patrons / members, customers, however we want to call them, can digitize their VHS tapes and audio cassettes and film and all of those kind of things. So worked on a grant for that, as well as a museum assessment for Colton Hall. So that's what I've been up to in the past couple days, and thank you.
Nothing like hitting the ground running. We're sure glad to have you aboard. So moving on, receive financial report. Are there any questions or comments from trustees? And again, if there's nothing from trustees, Francesca, do we have anything from the public who would like to comment on that?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. Chair Felguth, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Item number 6, receive statistical report. And again, trustees, any comments, questions, corrections? Bob?
Yeah, I have a second here. There we go. On the first of the 2 pages of data that we have for this item, in the column or in the section under circulation services, the bottom line is patron app, and it went from 0 in 1 year to over, what is that? Over 1,800 the next year. I don't know what patron app stands for in this chart.
It's the phone.
It's the checkout on the
Oh,
phone.
okay. It's the number. Oh, okay. Then that,
You can have it
that
on-
explains why I went from 0. Because for a while we've discussed several times that that's not getting used frequently, but I guess a lot of them are seeing Carl's instructional video and check that's checking out books with your phone, right? Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to mention, a couple lines above that about items checked out from the Bookmobile in 2021, 55. And of course, that's when we were really not functioning. To this past year, 6,500. I mean, I don't know, we'd have to check the data that the Bookmobile must keep for which of the stops that we're currently able to visit, where more books are getting checked out or anything. But I know going to some senior residences in addition to the parks where parents and children come to the Bookmobile, I know visiting some of the senior residences, it's just been a fantastic innovation and big hit, and they just can't look forward to it enough. I mean, it's almost as much as nap time. So I imagine a good portion of that 6,570 Bookmobile checkouts were at the senior residences, and we can verify that. But I guess if my hunch is correct, it would be provide maybe some guidance to how we expand and to where we expand the activities of the Bookmobile. And I know sometimes when the Bookmobile stops somewhere, they have a little program for the kids, whether it's singing or dancing or show and tell or something. And I don't know, Kim, do we do that when we stop at, say, Park Lane or Merrill Gardens, or do we just open up shop and they come by and get books?
Typically there's no activities, it's just checking out books. The caveat there is when we go to the preschools I was mentioning that we're looking at returning to, those were specifically designed to do a story time. But at the other stops, it would be a special event if there was a performance or an activity. It's not something we do on a regular basis. And in the past, though, there has been an event or two at the senior residences, but it's not something we've been doing on a regular basis.
I was just thinking, I mean, there are, it's almost like oral interpretation. I mean, there are readings that adults might attend, whether it's poetry or something like that. And maybe just a brief, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes, while the Bookmobile is in the parking lot of Park Lane or Merrill Gardens, to have a little thing that would attract them. Doesn't have to be a big production by any means, but just something like that.
Harish.
Yes. The patron app use has certainly gone up, but it's still about 2% of the items checked out with self-check. That's just a very small amount. And I'm curious why it's so minuscule relatively. I have my own comments on why it's difficult to use, because there's no table where I can put my things, but I can then scan it, but minor things like that. But I'm wondering if there's been any attempt made to find out just why.
Well, I would say it hasn't been on the top of my list just yet, as you're saying, Vice Chair Joshi. I looked at it, I did the data, I thought it was 1%, so maybe a little lower than you. When I was pulling the percentage of that, because I saw the self-checkouts around 38%, help desk is 21%, on there and looking at Bookmobile currently about 3%. Where in the last 2019 Bookmobile was about 5%, but I know we have less stops right now. So yeah, so looking at that all together, I think as we look at our technology and we bring on our self-checkout machines, how do we increase that? Because I think an overall increase of the self-checkout machines, and it could also be placement or on the receipts, or how do we notify more and more people throughout it? So we have to do a process for it, for checking it out. But I don't think everybody brings their smartphone with them. It's some people do, and not everyone's used to using the smartphone as a checkout or a QR code and all of those things yet.
Marcia?
This is a very small thing, but in the video, it says, here's how to do it. Type your library card in. And what it doesn't say is you only have to do that once. And from then on in, you don't need your library card anymore. But it doesn't say that. And so I said to myself, if I have to type my library card in, why don't I just bring my library card? And so I'm not going to use the patron app until I discovered that you only put it in once, until, of course, Apple does an upgrade or something and then it gets lost. But in general, I also agree with Harish that, well, I just put mine on top of a book somewhere in order to check it out. But it would be nice if there was a little bit of space. I think that would be helpful. Also wanted to mention, Bob, I know there's 6,000 checkouts in 21-22, but in the previous year there was 15,000. So, part of that is the function of that we're not making as many stops, but we've got a ways to go to get back to where we were before the pandemic.
Bob?
Yeah, I think the reason that the number of patron apps is so much smaller than the number checked out at the self-checks, it's like 1/100th of the other number, is because going up to those we only have 2 of them. Those 2 self-check machines are a cinch to use. You slide it in, you slide it out, and you're done. And if I were in the stacks and I have to walk right by those self-check machines to get out of the building anyway, why am I going to pull out my cell phone and do 2 or 3 things when I can just walk by, slide the book in after my card goes in, and I'm out of there? And I find it really easy to do.
Phone was even easier. You just go like this and it's done.
Well, you got to turn on the phone, you got to call up the app, you got to aim the thing. I don't know that it's easier, but I don't think sliding through the self-check machines is a big deal. And furthermore, if you do have a problem, guess who's 4 feet away from you? A librarian to help you. Whereas if I'm back in the stacks or upstairs somewhere and I have a problem, whether it's with Apple or who knows, maybe it's with Bob, who am I going to call? I have to walk down there and tap Kim on the shoulder anyway. So I just think it's so easy to use the self-check machines that may account for it in part.
Well, these are possibilities for little mini workshops that you could do as part of adult programming too. It doesn't have to be real intense. It can be something really quick, really easy, but drop in, learn how to use the patron app, or drop in and learn how to use this, or the self-check. Harish.
Just a quick comment about what Marcia was saying. You don't actually have to type the numbers in. There's an icon there that says scan, and you scan the card. It reads it.
Yes, but you have to have it.
Yeah.
Jim.
Hey, if I could switch the discussion to a slightly different topic on this statistical report, I just wanted to highlight that once again, we have 430 hours of volunteer hours, and virtually every other statistic on these were lower than we were prior to the pandemic. And our volunteer hours continue to exceed the number we had prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to a major shout out to our volunteer corps and also to the staff that coordinates with them and encourages them and motivates them. That's just a major asset to the library. And I just
Yes.
wanted to acknowledge them once again.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Again, Francesca, any public input?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And Chair Falgoth, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Boy, this is a really short agenda today. I'm not used to this. I'm giddy. Trustee comments. Jim, why don't we start with you?
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I wanted to thank all of my colleagues for all your support and working with me and my own little quirks from time to time. It's been a delight, and I particularly wanted to compliment Brian on starting work before he even started work as a volunteer, getting some grant applications going. That's very impressive, and I thought your performance here at today's meeting was also very impressive. So in my opinion, you're off to a wonderful start. I'm so glad that you're here, and I look forward to your being here for many years and leading MPL forward in the future. Thank you.
Marcia.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think you're off to a great start. I think we made a good choice. So far, so good. And and we'll miss Jim. So it's bittersweet.
Thank
Happy
you.
to have you. Sorry to miss Jim. That's all.
Trustee Petty.
Yeah, maybe some of you didn't hear it, but after item number 1, which was acknowledging Jim, and we asked for public comments, there was one from somebody that said, "I'm Jim's wife." Thank God. And so, I just live a couple blocks from Jim, so maybe that's why I was able to hear that. But I know we'll look forward to Jim at various library events, and after he finishes traveling around the world, I wouldn't be surprised if he did some volunteer work, not to put any pressure on him. But and also it's a pleasure to have Brian around, and the broad perspective that I feel he's bringing to what the library has been and should become. So, looking good for the future.
Thank you. Vice Chair Joshi.
I'd like to welcome Brian once more. Welcome. I'm looking forward to working with you. And I'm sorry to see you go, Jim, but enjoy your travels. They say life begins when the family dog dies and you can travel. So.
My cat died last year. So.
Well, this was a delightful meeting. Brian, I am so glad you're on board. You've got good ideas, youth and energy, things I sorely lack and truly miss. So I look forward to working with you this year. And Jim, I'm going to miss you at our meetings. I hope you come and keep prodding us to keep us moving in the right direction and provide some of those public comments that we could use. And thank you all to staff. Francesca, particularly, thank you for helping me out getting things together for the meeting and the agenda and minutes. That's helpful. And Kim for kind of holding it together here, and Nat helping Kim hold it together so we could get Brian on board. So thank you, everyone. And with that, go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.